Isn't it true that in your report, you excluded the one name, Colin Albert, from the list of individuals that were in your notes?
Yes, because he arrived later in the evening. The other females were there from the start.
When you finally did get around to interviewing Colin Albert, you personally conducted that interview, did you not?
Yes,
Colin
along
Albert
with Trooper
told
Zach
you-
Clark.
One at a time.
I'm sorry.
Finish your answer, Trooper.
Please go ahead.
Yes, along with Trooper Zach Clark in my office.
Colin Albert told you that he was picked up by Allie McCabe from his uncle's house at 12:10 a.m., correct?
Correct.
Allie McCabe also told you that she picked up Colin Albert at 34 Fairview at 12:10 a.m. and then dropped him off at his house, correct?
Correct.
And she indicated that she went straight home after that, right?
Yes.
Did you conduct any further investigation to determine whether Colin Albert and Allie McCabe were actually telling the truth about that time?
We did not.
You just took them at their word, correct?
Yes.
Trooper Proctor, you realize you had a forensic image at the time. You had a forensic image of Jennifer McCabe's cell phone in your possession, right?
Correct.
You're also aware that she has a Life 360 app on her phone that tracks the location of Allie McCabe, correct?
I was not aware the app tracked her daughter. I knew of the Life 360 app, but I wasn't aware of the capability of her tracking her daughter.
Did you bother to look at Jennifer McCabe's Life 360 app to determine whether Colin Albert and Allie McCabe were telling the truth about the time that they supposedly left 34 Fairview?
Objection.
Did you do that alone?
I did not.
Well, my friends, I don't know what to say. I might have to invent new words at this point. I seem to recall that English has the most words of any language, but I might need to come up with new ones. Either that or rediscover some old ones, because I don't know that I have vocab words sufficient for whatever this is. It's like the closest I've got is farce, and I'm not even sure that really works anymore.
Trooper Proctor, did you include in your investigative file any Celebrite report related to the Life 360 app that was on Ms. McCabe's phone that you earlier testified to?
Trooper Garino was our cell phone expert, kind of handled that, so I'm not positive if that report, if he generated that report.
Did you review a Life 360 report in an effort to determine whether or not Colin and Allie were telling the truth?
No.
Did any of the reports you turned over in discovery ever mention the Canton Mutual gas station cameras or the cameras from Canton High School?
No, because we did not retrieve any video from those locations.
And you didn't mention in your report that you even sought the footage from those locations, correct?
I don't believe so.
You did say that you would add it to the, quote, list. Is that right?
Yes.
And you're aware, obviously, as one of your responsibilities, to maintain and keep your handwritten notes from all communications, all investigative activities involved in the case, correct?
Yes.
And you have no notes on this conversation, correct?
Correct.
As the lead investigator, Trooper Proctor, you are responsible ultimately for deciding which witnesses will be interviewed and which witnesses will not be interviewed, correct?
Like I mentioned yesterday or Monday, it's a collaborative effort within the office, so we bounce ideas off each other as far as what witnesses need to be interviewed, et cetera. So it's more of a group effort, a group decision.
But as the case officer, you make some of the final decisions on who's going to be investigated, who's going to be interviewed, things of that nature, right?
Yeah, facilitate certain areas, yes.
I want to
Just
talk about
say
some of
yes.
the witnesses that you interviewed in the days and weeks immediately following Mr. O'Keefe's death. You interviewed Brian Albert, correct?
Correct.
Nicole Albert, yes?
Yes.
Chris Albert,
Yes.
Julie Albert,
Yes.
Jennifer McCabe,
Yes.
her husband Matt McCabe.
Correct.
All those individuals are related in one way or another, either through marriage or otherwise, to each other, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And you also interviewed Brian Higgins, is that right?
Yes.
I want to talk for a second about the individuals that you did not immediately choose to interview. Julie Nagel wasn't interviewed until October 2022, correct?
Correct.
That's 7 months after the incident, right?
Correct.
Sarah Levinson was not interviewed until October of 2022, also 7 months later, correct?
Correct.
Caitlin Albert was interviewed July 6th, 2023, correct?
Yes.
That's 16 months after the incident. Is that right?
Correct.
Brian Albert Jr., July 6th, 2023. right?
Yes, sir.
Allie McCabe, August of 2023, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's 18 months after the incident, correct?
Correct.
Heather Maxson, she was not interviewed until September 21st, 2023, 17 months later, correct?
Correct.
Richard D'Antano, September 2nd, 2023, is that right?
Yes.
So you waited more than 18 months to interview him as well, is that right?
Yes.
And then Brian Loughran, snowplow driver, August 2023, 17 months after the incident, correct?
Correct.
You testified under oath on April 21st, 2022 in the state court grand jury proceeding that no snowplow traveled down Fairview Road on January 29th, correct?
Correct.
Why did you say that, Trooper Proctor?
That was based off interviews with Mr. Trotter that the plows weren't out until they met up at 2:30. And then it was my understanding they were focusing on the main roadways.
You did, in fact, interview Michael Trotter, did you not?
Yes.
And isn't it true that Michael Trotter told you that, in fact, Brian Loughran was plowing 34 Fairview that morning?
Objection.
Is that what he told you?
I don't recall that statement from him.
In reality, Trooper Proctor, you did not want to speak to anybody in the weeks and months following this incident who didn't fit your narrative, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it. Is that true?
That's simply not true. Absolutely not.
Certainly, you didn't want to talk to anybody who could say that there was no body on the lawn at 2:30 in the morning. Is that right?
No, it's not true.
Are you aware that Lucky Loughran, in fact, did report that there was nobody on
Objection,
the
Your
lawn?
Honor.
Are you still the case agent in charge of this case?
Yes.
As the lead investigator and the case agent, you're aware it's also your responsibility and your obligation to investigate all potential individuals, right? All potential suspects.
Yes.
You're obligated to investigate anybody who would have a motive, a means, and an opportunity to commit the crime or the offense, correct?
Correct.
Let's talk about Brian Higgins for a second. You know that name?
I do, sir.
He's a fellow law enforcement officer, and you knew that, right?
Yes.
You waited until February 10th to conduct a pre-scheduled interview with Mr. Higgins, didn't you?
Yes.
He was engaged in a flirtatious relationship with Miss Reed.
He did.
As a matter of fact, he told you that he was engaged in a flirtatious relationship with Miss Reed over text messages, but on at least one occasion that resulted in a kiss, correct?
Yes.
And then he also told you that he had taken the liberty to extract certain conversations from his own cell phone, right?
Correct.
And he brought you a hard copy of those text messages, right?
He did.
And you knew that those text messages were messages that he curated to give to you, right?
Yes.
He's the one that made the determination of what was important, what was not important to give to you, his interviewer, right?
Objection.
Was that your understanding, Trooper?
It was my understanding Mr. Higgins was being very forthcoming by providing those messages. It's not uncommon for witnesses to take screenshots or send us emails or send us text messages. So he just had a different means of producing text messages.
Well, you were
Really?
actually asked that question in a different proceeding, under different questioning. And you were asked whether or not in your career as a law enforcement officer has any person or witness ever brought a self-extraction of text messages to an in-person interview, correct?
Correct. Most
And your answer was,
civil.
your answer was, Trooper Proctor, you had never experienced that in the history of your career, correct?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
you became aware pretty early on that Mr. Higgins at least had a motive to want to visit harm on John O'Keefe, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
No, absolutely not.
Well, you knew he had this flirtatious relationship with Karen Reed, is that right?
Yes.
You became aware that he ignored, you saw the text messages, you became aware that Karen Reed actually ignored text messages from Mr. Higgins while at the Waterfall Bar and Grill with John O'Keefe, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
Yes.
And you're aware that at 12:20 a.m., Brian Higgins sent a text message to John O'Keefe, coaxing him to 34 Fairview, correct?
Objection.
I'll see you at sidebar on this.
Ooh, that sounds suspiciously like it might be motive. Ooh. Okay, so he had a romantic relationship or wanted a romantic relationship. Wasn't exactly going the way he did, and he tried to influence the victim to show up to the place where the murder occurred. Could be suggestive of something. Might want to look into it. I might warrant a look-see. Might want to take a chance of looking at that one, possibly. But no motive at all. Didn't see anything there at all. Okie dokie.
Do you recall a text from Brian Higgins to John O'Keefe after they left Waterfall? Where are you at? You also recognized that Brian Higgins certainly had the means to commit the crime, correct?
No, I don't.
He's a big guy, certainly had the physical ability to get into a physical altercation with John O'Keefe, correct?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Just because he's a big guy doesn't have the means or the motive to hurt Mr. O'Keefe.
I wouldn't ask
They were
you.
That wasn't the
friends.
question.
I wasn't asking about motive. I'm asking about means. Could he do it? Could he throw a punch? Knock a guy down, knock a guy out?
I can't speak to his fighting ability, sir.
Well, you've met him, right?
That one interview, yes.
Yeah, he's huge. Do you agree? He's a big dude, right?
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Bigger than me, right?
Yeah.
Bigger than you.
Yep.
You knew that he was former military
I did, yes.
and is a trained ATF agent, federal agent, right?
Yes.
And you were in possession of video surveillance from the Waterfall Bar and Grill, correct?
Yes.
And literally in the minutes before John O'Keefe's death, you saw video surveillance of Brian Higgins and Brian Albert taking fighting stances with one another, correct?
What?
I interpreted that as horsing around.
I didn't ask you how you interpreted it, Trooper Proctor. I asked you if you saw
Oh my God.
it. Did you see it or not?
I did.
And what you saw was these guys taking fighting stances, correct?
Objection.
Is that what you saw?
Playful fight stances.
What? The guy who was trying to get with the girl. The guy who was trying to entice the victim to the murder scene. The guy who was caught on camera in playful fight stances. You didn't believe warranted any further investigation or consideration. What? Okay.
On January 29th at 2:22 a.m., there was a call between him and Brian Albert that morning.
I was not aware of that.
You weren't?
Might have been important to your investigation, don't you think?
I don't know what the call was about.
Sorry, finish that.
I don't know what the call was about. I don't know if they actually connected and communicated what the length of the call was, so
Right. And you never asked, did you?
I was unaware that call took place.
And you were unaware that that call took place because you didn't get his phone. To
Oh my
Proctor,
God.
Right? You were unaware of that call at that time because you didn't see his phone, correct?
Objection.
Correct.
Right.
So let me see if I can summarize this correctly. You are the lead agent, the lead investigator, but you didn't look into Colin Albert. You didn't look into Brian Albert. And you didn't look into the ATF agent, Brian Higgins, the guy with a potential motive, the guy who was trying to get with the girl, Karen Reed, the person who was dating the deceased and would presumably be in your way, the person that you were play fighting with the night of the murder, the person who you had conversations with, the person who you tried to entice to the murder location. But we didn't look into him at all. Didn't make any sort of investigate. Didn't get the phone. Didn't do it because he's just merely a witness. And why would we need to look into Colin Albert? He was at the house. Why would we need to check with him? And why would we need to look into Brian Albert? After all, he's just a fellow cop too. No reason to go look in any of their phones. No reason to follow up on any of those leads. No reason to find that Celebrate data. The guy himself, Proctor, just said he didn't know about the phone call. He doesn't know about the call because he didn't look. He didn't do his investigation. Yet he's somehow 16 hours into the investigation, ready to pin it all on Karen Reed, despite these obvious steps that should have been taken in a full investigation. The shame of this and the shame of Proctor is so unbelievable. It is truly amazing that he is still employed and still technically the lead agent in charge of this investigation.